The first stage is break people down, get them broken.
Fear is one of the most powerful human emotions. While highly useful in situations where threat of immediate harm exists, it is the most debilitating and dangerous of emotions when present unnecessarily.
So you see, the thing is that when people become addicted to something like technology, they think they need it, but they don't necessarily need it.
Making people feel special is an overwhelmingly great feeling that traps them in. Overall, in this stage, you need to, as Rick says,
talk about everything negative in the world, negative in their life, put a lot of pressure on them to crack and break. And then second, change them. Once they're in that broken state, introduce your ideas. And a lot of it's accomplished by environmental control, social isolation, information control.
I was warning about the plan for something called the Internet of Things, where everything is connected to the internet. Now already billions of things are connected to the internet. Everything's connected to AI and the internet. The internet, by the way.
And then once the person has accepted that program, then you move to the third stage, which is reinforcement.
Now, the actual process of brainwashing is somewhat disappointingly abstract and inconcrete. There's no three-step guide to brainwashing your cult followers. The process is more of an art than a science.
And so the idea is, before you can make a physical connection to AI, and people accept this, you've got to make a psychological connection. And what they're doing, because it's all a psychological game, the few cannot control billions unless they control the psyche of the billions.
Humans, especially since the Industrial Revolution, have become increasingly protected from the dangers that our ancestors faced in relation to the natural world. But as mankind's fear of nature and the elements has fallen, in its place many other fears have come to fill the void. Some of these fears have arisen in response to real threats, but many have been in response to things imagined, as the Stoic philosopher Seneca pointed out. There are more things likely to frighten us than there are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. While some of these imagined fears are of one's own making, many are the consequence of narratives created by those in positions of power. Individuals looking to take advantage of and manipulate others have long realized the power of fear. When one is gripped by fear of a threat, real or imagined, their rational and higher cognitive capacities shut down, making them easily manipulated by anyone that promises safety from the threat. No passion so effectually robs the mind of all its powers of acting and reasoning as fear, wrote the 18th century philosopher Edmund Burke. Ruling classes for thousands of years have understood the power of intentionally invoking fear in their subjects as a means of social control.
And what you're doing is you're preparing the subconscious, particularly the subconscious, conscious as well, to become familiar with the world you want to take people into. So as the world is brought in for real, that familiarity is going to lessen the resistance to it because there's a familiarity about it.
I'm going to do it, David.
Physical attacks lead to a corresponding increase of trust in political leaders and submission to them. This effect is likely the same whether the attack be a surprise, known to political leaders yet allowed to happen, or directly orchestrated by these same leaders who stand to benefit from the increased trust and submission. False flag operations are used because people generally do not have access to the details, so they are prone to rely upon what they're told and thus are easily deceived. People will, for the most part, believe what they are told in times of crisis, and so government officials, whether their motives are good or evil, capitalize on or completely fabricate the crises. Repetition is also a well-known and prevalent propaganda technique used to solidify falsehoods and perpetuate fear in the public consciousness. By repeating specific phrases and warnings, and displaying particular symbols and images over and over through various mediums, those in power are able to paralyze entire populations with a fear psychosis. Plato rightly stated that ignorance is the root of misfortune, and as long as we remain ignorant of the fact that all too often, those who claim to protect us from fear are actually manipulating our fears for their own benefit, then we will be contributing to the misfortune of the world through our ignorant compliance. The reality is that most of us are not in a position to single-handedly change the world. but we can at least try to rid ourselves of the unnecessary fears which are the fuel for so much hate and destruction in the world. In fact, taking responsibility for one's actions and the beliefs that motivate such actions may be the most important thing one can do when faced with the prospect of an oppressive government. For as Stanley Milgram noted, the disappearance of a sense of responsibility is the most far-reaching consequence of submission to authority. And furthermore, might there be truth to the comment by F.A. Harper that the man who knows what freedom means will find a way to be free?
5G is ramping up this whole, what they call smart grid. Do you notice how everything today is called smart? Mm-hmm. Everything called smart is part of a smart grid, and part of that smart grid is connecting AI to the human brain. So everything is connected by is controlled by AI, and whoever controls AI controls everything. And from one central point, when this grid is up and running and it's being put into place more and more every day all over the world, whoever controls that central point controls not only everything technologically, controls the human mind, controls the psyche of the billions. It's a very, very important psychological manipulation technique. It's called preemptive programming. Mm. Okay, this is how it works. You are here, you want to go there. That society is so dramatically different to this one, you're gonna face a response against it. You want to do what? So what you do is you fill the movies and the programs with storylines and scenes and portrayals of that world. And so what you're doing, and you look at the movies that have come out in the last 10, 15, 20 years about this whole world of technology and robots and AI. The only way that they are going to connect everyone to AI, no matter where they are in the world, is by having every inch of the planet covered with Wi-Fi. The cloud. This is what Kurzweil says, that the human brain is going to be connected to the cloud. So the cloud has to be global. And they are putting thousands and thousands of satellites up in orbit. Musk, one of the major ones through his company SpaceX, to beam Wi-Fi at the planet so no one can escape from it.